Alright, so this is the neck, and we are going to do the fretwork and then some sanding. Probably we do it all at the same time, but where do we start? So I don't know how I can tell with the camera that I've got, standard definition, but some of these frets are really rough edges. So it looks like they put the frets in and then they used a radius block which scratched up the corners, the edges of the frets, but not so much in the middle. However, when I do the eyeball test, just looking down the length of the neck, I don't see any problems with leveling. The frets all line up nice and straight. So the issue is the condition they're in. You can see by following the reflections, reflections all just disappear when we get near the edge. Or when we get near the edge, I look at number 9 there. Whoops. There. Number 9 is not showing reflections at all, almost. It is super scratched up. And they're also really yellowish in color. They're not nice and sort of nickel chrome color, which I would expect. So I'm hoping that that's just some of this sealer that they've sprayed on it that's built up on the frets, and it'll clean up when I hit it with the sandpaper. Also, the wood is sort of a mottled kind of finish. You can see the way it's not reflecting light around the edges. That is to do with the quality of the spray sealer that they put on it, or just the fact that they only put on one super quick coat. So there are two options. One is to lacquer the neck, and the other one is to sand it down and just go with an absolutely natural finish. And this being a replica, I'm going to go with the natural finish, as that's what Eddie goes on and on about, and why the necks of his guitars look so filthy. It's because he doesn't have any finish on them at all. It's just his hand sweat and oils and all sorts of stuff that cruddies up the wood. But he says it makes it sound better, so whatever. It's authentic. The screw holes in the headstock are not straight at all. So if I tilt the neck to line the things up, like, I don't mean the post hole peg, those holes are fine, but the screws that hold the tuners in place do not line up. So I'm not sure what that's going to be about. We're going to have to see. But here we have a bunch of sanding ahead of us. I thought I'd put all the tuning pegs in place and then line them all up as best as I can. The B sticks out a little farther than the rest, so I use a piece of wood to make sure that I've got them all straight along the back. And then you look at the screw holes, and these are close, way off, like half of the way off. This one's half the way off. So that's, you know, not good enough. I don't want these things to be at funny angles. If you're going to do something, do it right. And I want this to look right. So I'm going to have to fill all those holes in with something, wood filler probably. I'm not going to put dowels in because that's ridiculous. That's just way too much work. But got to make that straight, and then after I paint, then I'll just drill new holes. I mean, a couple of them are okay, but screw it. After I've put a couple of coats of paint on it, it's hardly going to be really all that important. So these look fine. They're not super tuners. They're just cheap Chinese, you know, $5 a set on eBay kind of deal. But they'll do the trick. So I'm going to hit this neck with some sandpaper, clean it up, and then work away the frets, and hopefully just by hand and not having to involve my set of files to do them, because they appear to have decent crowns on them. They're just so heavily scratched. Like, all this work here is just, those are some grooves, man. So when I get at it with the sandpaper and get all this sealer spray off of it, and maybe we'll get a better look at how it's doing. So there we go. See how that goes. Alright, so check it out. This is the neck after I've done all my sanding. You can see I filled those holes. I'll drill new ones in the right spot. Getting that seal stuff off was a real pain. I sanded the neck with 220 and then 400 or 4 something anyway, and then next step I think was 1,000. And what happens is while I'm sanding away, particularly in between the frets, I'm getting metal debris coming off of the frets, and then it winds up embedding in the wood. So then the wood starts looking dark. It still does look a bit darker than it, I think, should, but you should have seen it when I was sanding, because I was just sort of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with the 1,000. I didn't want to do that with any of the other papers because I don't want to put scratches in the frets that I'll then have to deal with. But good old magic eraser to the rescue. Got all the nasty color off of the neck, so we're now back in business. The frets look pretty good. I don't think they need to be leveled or crowned. They look good enough to just go ahead with. Maybe this one's got a flat spot. Where are we? 12. I may need to crown this one. I'll have a better idea once I start sanding. So I'm going to start sanding the frets with 1,000, and then have to see what other paper I've got. But after I do that, I use the Dremel and then polish them with some kind of a rubbing compound. Actually use car scratch remover. New finish it's called. Anyway, the neck looks good. I'm not seeing any high frets, nothing significant. There's a couple of just imperfections, but the eyeball test works for me, satisfies me that there's not a real problem. And like I say, I don't see significant flat spots on these frets, so that's pretty good. Hopefully the neck, the nut rather, the Floyd nut will sit at the right height. Otherwise I'm going to have to start filing or shimming, and I don't have any shims. I have files, but I'd rather not have to go to that extent. So anyway, that's this guy. The next step is taping the wood with masking tape and just exposing the frets so that I can start sanding them in earnest and getting them to shine. And then as soon as that's done, I'm probably going to leave the wood unprotected so that it gets dirty and relic-y looking. I might oil the wood. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want it to be a glossy mess, and I certainly can't be sanding in between coats with the frets there, because that's just going to create a bigger problem than I'm trying to solve. So anyway, there it is. Next, on to the fretwork.